Much for joining. Thank you everyone so much for joining. We appreciate your time today and are incredibly excited to have this panel discussion on the value of flexible benefits programs like lifestyle spending accounts. My name is Megan Burns. I'm a benefits strategy lead over at Forma, and my main focus is to help companies put together customizable plans that meet their overall business and benefit goals. I've worked in the benefits industry for over 10 years and feel just very blessed to get to work with so many amazing organizations and people. I will be the moderator MC during the presentation today, and with me from Forma is Jason Fan, our CEO and co-founder. Since 2017, Jason has been at the forefront of flexible benefits and the lifestyle spending account industry. He founded Forma to revolutionize how companies manage their HR programs and empower employees with choice. Today, Forma partners with over 200 customers worldwide and supports over 400,000 members across the globe. Also here leading the discussion are our partners from Aon, Stefan Gartner and Leslie McKee. Stefan is a partner and co-leader of Aon's global people analytics practice. He consults with a variety of organizations on topics related to workforce analytics. Stefan has a PhD in human resource management and has provided database workforce insights to clients for over 20 years. Leslie McKee is a senior vice president and practice leader in the health solutions consulting practice at Aon. Leslie manages large, complex client relationships and helps employers identify and implement strategies to support their business, human capital, and operational needs. This obviously includes total rewards and benefit strategies that balance employee retention and engagement with financial and operational objectives. Leslie also leads the Aon Western Region I&D Council, which enables local office participation in the recruitment, the development, leadership, and creation of external relationships to support a more diverse and inclusive environment. We are so excited to have this panel of experienced industry leaders discussing the topic of benefits ROI today. So in terms of an agenda, we'll kick off with an overview of why flexible benefits like lifestyle spending accounts are becoming increasingly more popular and why customizable programs like these are in such demand. We'll review the Aon Radford Conjoint Analysis Survey, design and methodology, as well as the survey results, including what the perceived value is of offering lifestyle spending accounts compared to other benefit programs. We'll then discuss how we were able to quantify the ROI for benefits flexibility before wrapping up with a QA session. And so a couple of housekeeping items before we dive in. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop those in the QA feature in Zoom. I'll be checking that throughout the presentation. I may interrupt the panelists here and there. If I'm not able to get to your question within that section, however, we'll make sure to come back to it during the dedicated QA time. All right, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass the mic over to Jason to kick off.
Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the amazing overview. Hello, everybody. To kick things off, one of the first things I wanted to point out here is that over the last couple of years, there has been full of changes, right? One after the other. 3 years ago, COVID happened. Everybody was trying to navigate a remote environment. And now return to office plans are starting to be rolled out. Companies are starting to put a lot more emphasis on it. The economy that we were in went into hyperdrive, and then inflation shot through the roof. And now we're in a very turbulent phase with just a lot more uncertainty ahead, right? And during all of those changes, a lot of societal changes keep on happening all around us. We saw last year the overturn of Roe versus Wade. We start to see the international conflict in Eastern Europe. There's just a lot of changes happening all around us. And when these big changes happen, big shifts happen, us as benefits practitioners, what do? Right? We try to rush to the front lines and we tried everything we have, resources, programs, investments, and whatever we can couple together to try and support the employees, right? After all, that's kind of like the nature of the job that we do. This is what we want to focus on. We want to be able to take care of the employees. But it's also really hard because no matter how many programs, resources, and products we seem to introduce into the benefits package, and there has been a ton. There has been a ton of different point solutions, a point of different programs that we put together. There's always seems to be more places where we need additional investments, additional resources, additional programs, new changes that come up. We're going to try to meet employers where they are. And in today's world where the budget is likely limited and we have to examine every dollar that we put into the benefits package, we have an impossible job, right? We have, on the one hand, trying to support employees everywhere around every corner. On the other hand, just very limited resources. So we have to make sacrifices and have to work within trade-offs, within constraints. And so we design the benefits package for maybe 90% of the population, maybe 85%, maybe 80%. And I know it pains us. It pains everybody here on the call because it's nearly impossible to take care of everybody, even though it's in the nature of our job, right? So when we looked toward the future, it may not get easier either, right? Today's workforce features up to 4 different generations of workers, each with their unique characteristics, their needs, and how they show up, how they want to be supported. The concept of meeting people where they are, right? Sounds very simple. It sounds very intuitive, but it's also distant. It's also distant from us. We're actually moving away from, like, it's harder and harder to meet people where they are. So what we're going to be talking about today is actually a great solution to this problem. A solution that actually focuses on converting your existing budget today into a flexible funding program designed to give your employees choice, right? And we're going to walk you through what that means and what kind of a value can we really pin down from a program design called the LSA. Okay, so very quick overview on this. Now, as a company, clearly we're here today to talk about LSAs and lifestyle spending accounts. That is probably something that Forma does, and indeed it is. It's one of the product lines that we feature. We're one of the early administrators for an LSA. Before LSA, the name itself actually came into the industry. We also feature some other programs like HRAs and pre-tax program like FSA and FSA, HSA and FSA. Our focus today is firmly on the LSA side, which is something that we're looking to share. From my angle, what I hope to bring to the table of discussion today is the lesson learned from our customer base, our member base across the globe. And so a quick question before we jump into the details here. Leslie, I would love to hear from you. Like, on the Aon side, very curious, how is the LSA concept being discussed?
And thank you, Jason. And you know, one of the things that you just said was 4 generations in the workforce. We actually have 5 generations in the workforce in many industries. You know, with the tightening of the labor market, we're looking for talent, and employers are looking for talent everywhere. But there's never been a time where there's been that disparity in terms, and that diversity in terms of generations. Also, you know, the benefits that were designed today, the benefits that were designed really were designed at a time when we only recognized 2 genders. When the thought that an individual would have 12 different jobs in a career was unheard of. And so the LSA provides an opportunity to have greater flexibility. You know, we see variability in the way that employees work, where employees work. If you're lucky, maybe you have a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. How do we construct a benefit program that supports such diversity? So looking forward to more discussion about that.
Great. And we've actually had a couple questions coming through the chat. And so maybe we can just pause and take a step back a little bit. Someone did ask, what is a lifestyle spending account? And so I'm happy to just kind of jump in on that really quickly too, because you hear the term, you see LSA, but really all it is a vehicle to allow for an employer to designate funds into an account that allows for employee choice. And so I know we're going to discuss that a little bit more throughout the session, but did just want to kind of touch in on that as well. And then the other question is for Jason. So looking at this slide, there are a lot of options. What types of LSAs do employees consider must-haves or expect, especially in today's market where cost is a major concern? It would be helpful to know what employers are offering.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I expected somebody to bring out a question along the lines of this. So Megan, if you advance actually to the next slide, we have some pretty data-driven metrics that we would love to share with the audience. what are some of the more popular categories, right, that our customers and also so some context and background data. Today, we serve a little bit over 200 customers, around 450,000 employees across those employer base, operating in a little bit over 100 countries. So this is kind of the data that if I'm presenting data today and metrics, this is coming from the customer base that we host. So building off of Leslie's point earlier, flexibility is the key word, right? So how can we make sure that the flexibility that we're talking about here is actually rooted in those the places where employees are needing the support the most, right? Flexibility, and also trying to match it up with meeting employees where they are. So what Megan mentioned earlier is also very important. The LSA concept is actually very simple. It's just an extremely customizable vehicle. And the employer, you can take full control of the program design and you can set the boundaries of the program easily with a lot of versatility. Ultimately, how do we design the right program for your population? That's a key question that we want to ask, right? So if we take a look at the metric that we have here, we can see that almost 2/3 of the program design of the employers that we work with offer a general purpose LSA with very broad coverage. And this coverage may mean that it includes fitness activities. The top 10 account categories on the right that you see: home office equipment, fitness equipment, caregiving, well-being services, really is a broad-based vehicle that allows the employees to pick and choose whatever is the most meaningful based on their lifestyle, hence the lifestyle name. Right. But at the same time, there are also a little bit more focused LSA type. Like, for example, the second one would be a wellness focused LSA. And a quarter of them, customer base, is offering a work from home related LSA. Both very sort of in character with a lot of the trends that we're seeing in the benefit space. And then there's actually very sort of additional LSAs that we see to supplement the more popular types. This includes learning and development, family support, caregiving, and many others. So we actually see a very interesting spread of different account types. So following this data, we actually started to ask ourselves the question, hey, intuitively, an LSA makes a lot of sense, right? It does not require a new budget. It moves budget into more efficient ways for employees to use it. It gives employees choice. It's almost zero administration for the employer. So, like, logically, this is great. It's kind of like the holy grail, right? It puts everybody's best interest together. But how do we quantify the ROI? How do we build a business case? How do we truly understand how much more valuable is an LSA in the employee's eyes, right? So this is actually why we partner with Aon, Stefan, and Leslie to figure out, hey, how can we pin down a number? What is the research that we can do to ultimately arrive at the ROI number? And I would love to actually pass the next portion over to Stefan, and let's talk a little bit about the study.
Yeah, so in late 2021, Jason contacted Aon and asked precisely that question. How can we compute an ROI of flexible benefits? And that question landed on my desk, and we started to work together on this to basically hammer out an approach that makes sense. So before I'm going into adaptive conjoint and what it is, at the end of the day, what we are trying to find out here, is how do employees value flexible benefits, and how does that value differ from benefits that are presented in different ways? So what is the perceived value of flexible benefits to employees? That's ultimately what we try to find out in dollars and cents. So we chose to do an adaptive conjoint analysis to do that. So an adaptive conjoint analysis is basically an employee survey, but it is a different kind of employee survey. It's a survey where employees are exposed to options. You see them shown there, option A and option B. And then they basically have to choose which of these options they would prefer. So let's take a look at these two options. Option A is a little bit lighter on financial wellness, but it's richer when it comes to paid time off, and it's richer when it comes to working from home benefits. So obviously, employees now have to make a trade-off. They have to decide whether the financial wellness is more important to them or not, or whether option B, whether an increase of financial wellness benefits from $500 to $2,500 basically compensates for the fact that they would have fewer paid time off and less working from home benefits. That's really the kicker. Through these kind of designs, employees are exposed to 10 of these different choices. We can tell how employees value different benefit elements and by how much more they value different benefit elements. So you probably still are, that design is widely referred to as conjoint analysis. This method is adaptive because not every employee is being exposed to the same choices. It's adaptive because the first choice that you make as an employee will determine what follow-up choices you will be exposed to, which is really interesting because that allows us to basically ask all the questions we need to ask by exposing employees to only 10 of these packages, as they would have to answer 50 or 60 of these. That's what the benefit of adaptive conjoint is. So we basically used this design to ask employees about how they would value 16 different benefit options. And one of the options they are exposed to is basically one where we simply say their employer provides $2,500 in benefits and I don't have a choice. So you can see that we can, with this design, compare no choice with a whole bunch of choice options to see how much more valuable choice would be. Every employee is exposed to basically three amounts: $1,500, $500, $1,500, $2,500. And two options basically were not about money; they were about time off. We basically provided employees with a choice of 1, 3, and 5 days off. Go to the next one. So one thing that is important to outline is who did we administer that survey to? We administered that survey to employees from 4 different organizations. All of these organizations were relatively small, but they represented different industries: software, health and wellness industry, professional services, and retail. I should say that this sample has a lot of new hires in there and younger employees. So you basically see that half of the people in the sample were new hires. You also see that 2/3 of them were millennials. But then again, we were slicing and dicing the results across all of these groups. So we do have plenty of Gen Xers in there to basically compare results. We also had plenty of employees with 1 to 5 and even 5+ years of tenure in there to compare the results. And generally speaking, there were very little differences in the results by age, by tenure, even across these 4 organizations, the results were very similar. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm slowly now going into explaining the results of this work. On the left-hand side, you basically see the results of one question that we asked about how employees value their benefits overall. So this goes from 0 to 100, and the average response was 70. Now, what does that mean? First of all, it means that the people that we included in the survey value their benefits about as much as other organizations that we did this kind of work with. So we ran this kind of surveys at Aon for about 20 years now, and we have a lot of data to compare the results with, and 70 is usually the median. So it means that these almost 400 employees across 4 organizations value their benefit package pretty much like other clients would, employees from other clients would. So that's number one. And then to put this into perspective, look at the right-hand side. We basically asked a few questions in that survey to basically understand how improvements and changes in benefit packages would change that overall assessment of value. So therefore, we were able to say, hey, a typical employee, the average employee, if that employee would get 5 more days of paid time off, that would increase their value of the overall benefit package from 70 to 74.5. So what does that mean? I said earlier that 70 is roughly the mean, the average. Once organizations go into the 80 to 90 territory, you're talking about the top 10, 20% of organizations. That's what we're talking about. If they go down to 50 to 60, we're talking about the bottom 10 to 20% of organizations. So in other words, a move from 70 to 74.5 is quite meaningful. If all employees would get that, that would basically get you from the median maybe to the 55, 60 percentile when it comes to the value of your benefits. All right, so that's to set the context. We administered the survey, and by June 2022, we started to get the results in. And let's talk about the results. If you can go forward 2 more slides. Yes, lots of data in there, and I hope there's no need to do too much squinting to see that. But you'll see there on the left-hand side, basically ranked the value of all of these different benefits from the perception, from the perspective of the employees. And please note, all of these different lines that you're seeing, they are all about $2,500. But employees still, even though it's the same amount of money that is presented to them, they still value them very differently. So see, for example, number 1, the one on top, that is 401k one, for $2,500 in 401k match. That one would be valued such that it would bring an employee perspective of their own benefits package from 70 to 75.2. So it's a pretty big improvement in value if those $2,500 are being offered as part of the 401k match. Second is the lifestyle spending account. And Jason talked about this a little bit. I would refer to this sort of the ultimate vehicle of flexibility. You can use those $2,500 for anything. Resort hotels, perhaps. You could buy gym membership with it. Anything that is basically falling into that lifestyle bucket. So when you see that value is 5, that would increase the value by 5.1 points. So those are the top 2. Below that, you would see a few other items that basically are all about giving cash reimbursement for things that people need. Food subsidies, health and wellness expenditures, for example, an exercise bike, and of course, additional paid time off. Those are all things that employees still value a lot. Now we're slowly going into the territory of what employees would value a little bit less, which are things like home office needs. Yeah, it's money, but it's money that you're not going to pay on yourself for fun, so to speak. It's more or less no money that you pay for things that you need. Part of that is HSA or mental health support, financial wellness expenditure on things like financial advice. And then you slowly drift down when you come to ranking 10 and below into things that are really not relevant for everyone. And that's why the average employee doesn't value them so much. Things like learning and development or pet care. Not everybody has pets. Tuition reimbursement. No, not some people already paid their tuition and others never went to college. So all of these things are valuable for some employees for sure, but on average, they are not valued to everybody. And then you see they're almost at the bottom. So on number 15, no choice. So you basically see down there that not being able to choose ranked second to last. And it only increases the value by 3.1. So that I'm going to go back to this number by 3.4. So in other words, not having a choice is nowhere nearly as much valued as being able to have access to a lifestyle spending account. And that fact, keep that in mind, is going to become really important when it comes to actually evaluating this. So just if you go very quickly to the next two slides, this basically just confirms what I said earlier. The no choice option ranked very much at the bottom of it, and the value of that is only 3.4. And then the highest, one of the highest value options was lifestyle spending account, and the value there is 5.1. Keep that in mind. We will use that information to basically compute an ROI. And I'll get back to that in a few minutes. But first, let's go back to Jason to put a little bit more context on this.
Yeah, appreciate it, Stefan. And one of the unique things I want to call out again, which we briefly touched on earlier, is the concept of lifestyle spending account is intuitively very flexible for the employees, right? We're quite literally allowing employees to pick and choose what is the most meaningful based on their individual needs. But what's also secretly very impressive is for the employer side, there's also a lot of flexibility. So Megan, if we go to the next slide, we actually have a handful of examples on how our customers have used the LSA concept to design benefits programs that are in line with their benefit strategy, employer brand, and overall really behaviors they want to incentivize from their employee base. Allbirds, for example, one of our key customers in the retail space, it really is the number one top performing and most utilized benefit across their employee population. They offer a lifestyle spending account as well as a work from home support program. Okay. Zoom, which is the technology that this webinar runs on, increasing LSA funds and show higher impact versus 401k match. And actually, we, in talking to Zoom in the last couple of months, they actually ran an internal conjoint study, very similar to the ones that we had collaborated with Aon on. And they actually found, surprisingly, even better result for the LSA program. Like LSA actually ranked higher than 401k in their internal conjoint survey that Zoom conducted. Palo Networks also is a very key, the LSA program is a key recruitment and retention tool for their global population. They run this program in a little bit over 20 countries. Lululemon is an amazing example here. Their LSA program has a brand associated. It's called Sweaty Pursuits. They encourage their employees to really wrap their Lululemon gear, go into fitness classes and activities. And there's actually a case study that if you go to the Forma website, joinforma.com, in the resources section, you can actually browse the case study directly associated with it. Okay, TripAdvisor is also another great example. Global, they offer a global program across different countries. This is a very flexible tool to help you bring an equitable program design across the global population in an otherwise very tough and complex set of operations if we were to bring global benefits forward. Right. Rev is also another customer of ours. This is really just one of the most excited programs that the employees care deeply about. Okay. So I wanted to highlight a couple of cases. Like this LSA really is also a very versatile program and tool in your toolkit as benefits professionals to design the right kind of approach to, based on your needs. And Leslie, I would love to pass the next one over to you. We'd love to hear this really from Aon's perspective. How are you guys seeing this being implemented?
Right, thanks so much. So our point of view is really informed by data, and we conduct surveys and found that 75% of employees really do want more choice and control over how their benefit dollars are spent. And there was another survey that I thought was fascinating. MetLife did a survey and found that 99% of the employees that responded were more likely to feel valued and appreciated when the employee understood the benefits. Not that the employee valued and appreciated their benefits more when they understood it, but the employee actually felt more valued and appreciated by the organization when they had benefits that they understood. So we too believe that it's important that employees understand their benefits. So one of the things that we did is we conducted a study. We study everything, at Aon, and found that for one client in particular, we looked at what was the value of the benefits from an objective perspective based upon many segmentations: age, economics, race, ethnicity, military status, gender orientation, location. And this organization, which was very much committed to equity and inclusion, was surprised to find that there was implicit and explicit bias in its benefits. They said, we don't have a blank check. We can't fix everything for everybody. But something like an LSA allows us to supplement the benefits that are offered, the core benefits that are offered, supplement them so that employees could find the things that were most important to them. And it's interesting, Jason, when you were going through the benchmark data, the ones that were most important to their employees were caregiver support, financial support, and fitness support. So it validates the information that came out of your benchmarking study. But again, we look at the employee benefits from many perspectives. Stefan talked about from the employee perspective. We also use objective measures to look at whether or not programs that are in place today have the opportunity to be supplemented through LSAs and other vehicles to reach more diverse populations. So Stefan, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Yep. All right. So go to the next slide. We are now going basically into the area where art meets science to basically go from showing how that employees value flexible benefits more to actually quantifying that in dollar terms. So how did we do that? At the end, it's fairly simple. So remember the no choice value rating that I showed you earlier was 3.4, meaning that $2,500 in no choice value and no choice benefits would increase the value by 3.4, whereas that increase would be 5.1 if it was if it was presented in terms of lifestyle benefits. So the difference is 1.7, simple math. And also simple math, 1.7 is about 50% of 3.4. It's actually exactly 50% of 3.4. So now what we basically said here is, all right, you can provide these $2,500 in the form of no choice benefits, or you can do this in the form of lifestyle benefits. And if you do this in the form of lifestyle benefits, the perceived value would be 50% higher. The perceived value would be 50% higher. So therefore, 2,500 magically turn into 50% more. And that is 3,750, and the difference is $1,250. So in other words, your choice just added 50% of value, or $1,250 to that employee's perceived workforce reward set. $1,250 or 50%, nothing to sneeze on. So let's go to the next one. So lots of data. I'm not going to go through all of that. The key thing that I wanted to point out is that 50% is the difference in value between no choice and the lifestyle benefit. We could have chosen others. If we would have chosen 401k, it would have been a little bit more. If we would have chosen the average of the top 5, it would have been a little bit less. So, but in all cases, the value increase would be somewhere around 40 to 50%. Let's go to the next one. And that basically just supports the same case. 50% if you compare no choice to the lifestyle spending account, 53% if you would have compared it to the other elements. So but what does that mean? Let's go to the next slide. It basically means that offering flexible benefits is a win-win. And as in any win-win, you can use it to completely benefit the employee, or you can use it to completely benefit the employer, or you can choose to do something in between. And we have these conversations with our clients all the time. So let's scale this up a little bit. If you are an organization that basically spends $1,500 on additional benefits, and if you have 1,000 employees, that costs you $1.5 million. If you choose to provide these benefits in a flexible way, that increases the value by 50%, and that would be a $750,000 gain. And then, of course, you can use these $750,000 in two ways. You can either keep the same statement and basically accept the fact that no employees have more value coming out of that. So at that point, the value goes entirely to the employees. Ultimately, it also probably reduce turnover a little bit, makes them feel more better about your work relationship. But you can also use that money to save. So rather than paying a $1,500 benefit stipend, you can use a $1,000 stipend. And employees use it flexibly, and employees would still have the same value. So that's basically what it means. It's a lot of money that you can save or add value to for your workforce using flexible benefits. Let's go to the next slide. I said earlier that we looked at this and we sliced and diced the data in different ways. This is just one example where you see how Gen Z employees responded compared to millennials. And I thought it was interesting that the value is different, but the top 5 are basically represented for both of these employee groups. Whether you're Gen Z or millennial, lifestyle spending, 401k, health and wellness, food subsidy, and additional PTO showed up within your top 5 at different ranks, but they all still showed up within the top 5. And the other one that I thought was interesting here is that Generation Z employees as a group didn't seem to appreciate flexible or any sort of benefits as much as others. You see that basically every one of these items, so Generation Z employees, was valued a little bit less than it was for millennials and others. Which brings me to the last point that I wanted to raise here. One thing to add value to benefits is certainly to provide flexible benefits. But another thing that adds value is basically to customize these, to help to customize those, and basically also inform employees. What I think might be going on here is that Gen Z employees really don't understand benefits just as much yet. So maybe there would have been an opportunity here to explain to them better from the start, what is it, what are benefits, and what do they do for you? So with that, I'm passing this back on to Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. And so I'm a parent, and there are things that I think that my children should have. And for those of us that design benefit programs, sometimes we click into that parental mode and think, but I couldn't give up. I have to provide certain levels of benefits. And one of the firms that we work with, Alight, does an annual consumer mindset survey. And this information on this slide shows what benefits do employees universally value, couldn't give up, and then what kinds of benefits may be more top of mind for specific segments. And I gave the example of a client that we worked with where we really did look at segmentation and many, many dimensions to identify what was most important. And so I can't do a show of hands, but I'm curious whether or not members of today's audience would also say, yes, our employees universally value our medical, dental, and vision plan, and whether or not that is something that applies in your organization. I can't remember if it was Fortune or Forbes that recently had a survey, and it said that medical was top for employees in terms of benefits, but life and disability were also important. And so that threw me a little bit for a surprise. But then I remember that there are about 250,000 children who lost a parent due to COVID. So we have a generation of youngsters who saw their parents die in a way that other people had never seen their parents die. And so as we think about what benefits employees value, I encourage everyone to think about, and how might that evolve? Nowhere on the screen do we talk about increased security and safety. Perhaps that's an emerging benefit that somebody really smart will come up with to help us feel more secure in an increasingly unsafe world. So as you think about your employee population, today and the employee population that you'll be recruiting in the future and the employee population that you may be recruiting today, what are the programs that employees most value? What are those benefits that you feel as the benefits parent you need to provide? And then where can you engage and have more flexibility? So some great examples, I think, under the DEI column, but some other thoughts on the ways that organizations are creating more flexibility is to have culturally sensitive support for women, for men, for those in the LGBTQ community, the BIPOC community, low-wage earners. How many of us, when it was time to go home for COVID, said, okay, I need an office set up? Well, what if you have colleagues where there is no space in their home for an office setup? How do you support them? So looking at things holistically. What are the special needs population? There's a growing population of employees that are on the autism spectrum. How are you supporting them in their success and in their career, as well as encouraging those that work around them to support their needs? And then we've talked about personal choice, and again, the LSA is an increasingly important component of reaching those segments of the population that may not be embedded in what is called that universally valued plan. How do you make the medical plan more accessible? How do you make the dental plan more affordable? And how do you reach those segments of the population that aren't part of the traditional workforce? So Jason?
Yeah, so I think, or Jason, if you had any other thoughts on that, feel free. I know we're coming up at time. We're pretty close to that 45-minute marker. And so if you're able to stay on with us for a little bit longer, we'd love to go through some of the questions that we received via the chat, as well as wrap up the conversation. If you're not and you have a hard stop, that is entirely okay. Everyone will receive a copy of this deck and can access the recording as well. So wanted to add that really quickly, but Jason, if you had any additional thoughts on what Leslie just shared, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I would just really echo one more time, Leslie, everything Leslie shared is it's on point. Leslie, I really appreciate you and both you and also Swan's thought leadership in this discussion. It's about meeting people where they are at the end of the day. How do we make sure that we do the best we can to reach the segment of the population that is just inherently different? We have a very diverse and very different workforce compared to before. How do we reach more people? And my fundamental belief is that the answer is not brute forcing it by offering everything under the sun. There's no way, right? Even though the parental instinct is for us to pull together as much resources, as much programming as we can, that just won't cut it. You're going to burn yourself out. It's not the right way to do it. So I think LSA is a very versatile vehicle for you to really bridge the gap, bring the two best interest parties of the best interests together. So I'm just really excited to see how this space continues to evolve. And let's jump into the Q&A.
Great. So this question came in. Would you recommend separating LSAs from the core benefits?
Yeah. So I tried the best I could doing a type response. But I'll summarize it for everybody here. This actually is exactly what Leslie was talking about on the last slide, which is there are some certain programs, core benefits, that people universally treasure and love, right? So for those, I would highly recommend making sure that we continue to upgrade those things. Medical, dental, vision, retirement plans, right? These things are universally loved by people from the last slide that Leslie shared with us. But there will be that long tail. What about caregiving? What about professional development? What about tuition? What about student loan repayment? What about elderly care, right? What about other things that happen in international markets that may look different compared to the United States? What about other people? What about security and safety that Leslie just mentioned? There are a lot more things that we just cannot give one additional program, one additional vendor, additional resources to everybody, right? There's things that certainly does not scale along with the population. We recommend lumping everything into an LSA and design the program scope and specs based on your employer brand and what is the behavior you're looking to incentivize for your employee group. It's one of the most, again, versatile tools that you have in the toolkit.
Great, thank you. And I loved this question. I feel like it comes up all the time and definitely on point as we talk through the perceived value. So the question reads, how is funding put into an LSA differ than simply increasing an employee's salary by, let's say, $2,500?
Yeah. I think Stefan actually answered that for us very clearly. So I'm going to try to provide a perspective on my side, but if there's anything to add from your side, I really would love to hear your thoughts on this as you're the expert. The three things that we always come across is, first one is funding flexibility. LSA funds are what we call notional fund, meaning that the funding is there for the employees to see. They see the value, they see they're being taken care of by you as an employer, but it is not actually money out the door, right? It will only pay out to the employees in a reimbursement or payout model once somebody used the funds. That is usually very welcomed by the finance counterparts because it's just for cash flow purposes, it's better. Also, there are actually tax advantages across some certain LSA categories. Like, for example, if you allow caregiving, if you allow professional development, if you allow work from home support, those are actually tax-free. And so it's going to be more advantageous for both you as an employer and also for the employees to access the funds via an LSA versus a pure salary increase, right? Second one is guiding employee behavior. There's, again, categories and guidelines and guardrails that you can put in place as an employer to guide employees towards the areas that you want employees to be taken care of. Again, all the categories that we have just talked about earlier, you actually get to model the behavior based on how you design this program. Okay. The last one, and what I believe is the biggest one, because this is the best impact that can help you create a business case, bring up to the executives and to the others on the team. Perceived value increase. Again, Stefan has a lot more authority on this topic than I do, but I'll just share one example with everybody. We have a customer in the financial space, global population, 30 plus countries, a little bit over 10,000 employees. They were doing the payroll deposit model. They were simply giving people $50 more, so $600 on a yearly basis, LSA. They call it the health and wellness LSA. Pure payroll deposit goes directly to the paycheck. They did a survey 2 years ago. Does anybody care to guess how much population actually is even aware of this program? Right? The answer is 30%. 7 out of 10 people did not even know this was a thing in the population. They were getting it, right? And so the perceived value there is 0. If people are not even aware that you're offering this, there's no perceived value. So that money actually goes to waste. And plus, how do you know that money is going towards supporting employees' health and wellness? They could be spending it on anything else, right? So this is where really the versatility of the LSA come in. It's the perfect balance between giving employee flexibility, meeting them where they are, but still having the guidelines for you to control as the employer so that it is a benefits program that you own ultimately. Right? So that I'll stop right there, but because there's anything to add from Leslie and Stefan, we'll love to hear from you both.
So I appreciate your comments, and I'll just add that we strongly encourage consumerism when it comes to healthcare, for example. And so vehicles that, like the LSA, that encourage employees to think about not only the cost, but the value they derive from the health plan are important. I would never say that you couldn't just bump somebody's compensation. I'm not a compensation expert. But I do think that there is value when people see that something is allocated to their benefits versus just their regular paycheck.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jason, all the things you said. And I would also confirm this psychological effect. So if you pay somebody $2,500 more, it becomes part of your overall base pay pool. And within a year, you don't even know that it was there. It just has no effect. But if you have $2,500 in a lifestyle account, it's there every year. You see it. And therefore, because it's more, because you're more aware of it, there's more value to it. So it's a little bit of extra on top, a little bit of cream on top of the pie, so to speak. And if you just basically would use it as base pay increase, it would very quickly be forgotten.
That's great. Thank you. So we did have a couple other questions come in, but looking at time, I think what we can do is just move forward to wrap up. If we weren't able to get to your question, just know we have it on file. We'll reach out to you directly so you can get a response after this webinar wraps up. But did want to just say thank you, everyone, again for joining and your participation with all of these great questions on the call. If you'd like to get in touch with anyone from the former the Aon team here presenting today, all of our information is in this slide deck as well as within the chat. If you take a picture of this QR code, you can access a couple of different really great resources. So both the white paper that explains the ROI of flexible benefits that Stefan reviewed earlier today, as well as an ability to request a business value assessment meeting with Forma. And so essentially that business value assessment or BVA says, Forma will reach out to you to schedule time to learn more about your benefit goals, what you have in place today, what the utilization, the engagement, the costs are. So we can help make some recommendations or craft multi-year strategies as you're looking to streamline your benefit programs and provide more and greater employee choice. So again, thank you. Thank you all so much. Appreciate your time. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you jumping in. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Stefan, for joining us. Really appreciate it.